Hindsighters? This is Rhasheeda Davis back with another segment of the Indie Grind, and today we have bassist Mark Wade. Before I bring him in, let me tell you a little bit about him. He's been an active bassist for over 20 years and was voted one of the top bassists in 2016, 2018, and just last year in 2019. He has also appeared on the Today Show, and Wade has also performed in many music festivals. So please help me bring him in, guys. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. So I want to start off by talking about the instrument, the bass, your instrument. Out of all instruments to play, what drew you into choosing this particular instrument?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. You know, some people start playing music when they're really young. You hear about people who play piano or violin and they're like 3 or 4 years old. I didn't start playing music until a little later in life, and it was actually around the time I was about 14 years old. And the courage I had among the circle of friends I had at that time was to get into playing an instrument. And of course, everybody likes to play guitar, right? You know, very popular. And so a bunch of my friends, you know, they had already started playing guitar, and I was kind of late to the trend, right? So I said, oh, maybe I'll do that too. And they said, oh, you know what? You should play bass. Because I think they wanted a bass player because everybody was already playing guitar. They said, well, maybe somebody could play bass. So just on a whim, I picked it up. And it just so happened that random recommendation, it was kind of love at first sight. I picked it up, and it just seemed like the right thing for me. Playing electric bass, playing, you know, popular music, pop, rock music at the time, not playing jazz or, you know, the other kind of music that I play, you know, these days. But, you know, regardless of the genre, you know, right away when I tried it, you know, it really spoke to me.
Wow, okay. And like I was saying before, you have over 20 years as a bassist, which is a pretty long time. What would you say keeps you from taking up something different? What keeps you tied to the music?
I mean, for me, I play electric bass and I play acoustic bass. You know, I started on electric bass. Acoustic bass is something I also picked up relatively late. I was about halfway through college. I went to school for music, but I switched over to acoustic bass halfway through my studies at college at New York University. And, you know, I think the reason why I haven't gone to anything else is just to play any one instrument and try to do it at the highest possible level. There's never any shortage of stuff to practice. I'm always practicing. I'm always trying to get better. And the thought of like playing another instrument, I'm going to think, you know, oh my gosh, I'm already halfway up Mount Everest. I'd hate to climb back down and start up like another mountain. You know, instead, like there's just so many challenges, so many things I feel like I've yet to hit my stride with on the instrument. Even after 20 years of playing professionally and having some success at it, there's always plenty to keep me coming back for more on the bass.
Very nice, very nice. I read where you were on the Today Show. Could you tell the Hindsighters what that experience was like?
Yeah, that was a really neat experience. That was a while ago now. At the time, I was playing for the house band that played an early set at Birdland, one of the famous clubs here in New York. And one of the people who was in charge of the club at the time had a connection to a famous jazz vocalist by the name of Stacey Kent. And Stacey was coming around here into New York to play at Birdland. And then she also had a spot to play on the Today Show on Sunday morning while she was here to help promote the concert and all that stuff. So I wasn't playing for her concert. I wasn't playing in her band, but they needed somebody to play with her on the Today Show. And the connection was through Birdland. So, you know, it's really neat to go to 30 Rockefeller Center, you know, famous NBC building, and go inside the studios there. I remember having to be there amazingly early in the morning. I was there long before the sun came up. There was a lot of sitting around, and the actual shooting is very short. You know, like you don't get 2 takes, or there's no do-overs. Like they're on a very, very tight schedule. And we didn't play live. That was pre-recorded. And I do remember the very first tune started off with just me by myself playing the bass. And, you know, they have automated cameras in these big studios where the cameras can move around all by their own, and they're really big. And as soon as I started playing, the camera, like, zoomed in. You know, physically, it's almost like something is charging you. It's almost a little unsettling, and I wasn't really prepared for that. So it was kind of an interesting welcome to TV moment there. But it was a great time, and it's certainly a nice memory.
Very nice, very nice. You're also a member in a jazz program at a university, and also I read where it said that you're a New York Pops teaching artist. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so on the first point, I'm on the jazz faculty at Lehigh University. Lehigh University is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes west of New York City, where I live. And I go out and teach there, about once a week. All of the faculty are New York guys. Both the guys in my band, Tim Harrison, the pianist, and Scott Newman on drums, who are on both my records, they're both on the jazz faculty there as well. So I love doing it. It's really kind of the first, major teaching gig that I've had. I really enjoy doing it. It's just a lot of fun. We get to play a lot of great music with the faculty, but great to work with the students too. And yeah, I've been a teaching artist for the New York Pops here for about 4 or 5 years. I'm not really active doing it at the moment. The education department at the New York Pops has kind of gone under a restructuring, so they've kind of changed how they've done things. But I did a number of educational concerts for the New York Pops in public schools, mostly in the borough of New York City in the Bronx here up north, and a lot of jazz education concerts for kids who, sadly, not just here in New York, but all over the United States, music education in schools and public schools has been cut. The funding for that has been cut dramatically. So one of the things the New York Pops tries to do is fill in some of those gaps that they don't have by sending teaching artists to either teach them lessons or to do what I did, these kind of music appreciation concerts and teaching them what is jazz and maybe doing the music of Ella Fitzgerald for a concert or holiday music or other things like that to try to help these kids learn a little bit more about that kind of music.
Okay. So when you teach these students, do you see yourself in any of them, like their drive, their willingness to learn and understand kind of sort of some of the same traits that you had when you were learning back then?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Every student is different. I don't purposely try to fit them into the mold as to what I did. And you get students who are at all different levels of commitment and maybe, what path they're on, where they plan to go. But absolutely, the interesting thing is you can see parts of yourself in a number of students. Maybe it is that drive, or maybe it's the curiosity in one, or the way that a certain student approaches a problem, a technical problem on the instrument, a musical issue they're having a hard time conceptualizing. And the fun part for me as a teacher is to see that, but also one of the fun challenges as a teacher is when you don't see that, and you have to try to come at a problem with that student from a direction that I'm not used to, that I couldn't relate to personally, or that I haven't seen before. So yeah, it can be certainly very gratifying or kind of interesting to see things come full circle when you see yourself and your students. But one of the fun parts of being a teacher is sometimes when you don't see those things and you're forced to think outside the box.
Right. That makes sense. What do you teach your students that you wish you were taught when you were starting out?
Well, when it comes to the New York Pop stuff, I wasn't really exposed to any of the kind of music that I play now at a young age. Didn't know really anything about jazz, did not grow up in a household that listened to that kind of music. That was something that I came to discover on my own, really through time, through listening to, maybe more popular forms of music and then finding about what their influences were, and then going back in the timeline and then finding out about that music. Well, who were those? And I was always very curious. I was always naturally curious about who was coming from where, and that would lead me back more and more into, American roots music, blues music, and then jazz music. Fusion music maybe at first before coming at last to straight ahead jazz, if you will, some more of that kind of thing. So I certainly enjoy turning kids on at a younger age to that kind of music. If for nothing else, to be exposed to it. It doesn't mean that they have to go out and make a career of it, but, the more people know about that music, the better. The more people are exposed to that at a young age, certainly you see their willingness to have an affinity for that later on. And I think of all the things that I pass on to students, it's probably that. It's getting them as early as they can, to get them exposed to that kind of music.
Okay. So could you tell us a little bit about your organization, New Music Horizons, the nonprofit organization?
Yeah, and it's a little bit on the lines of what we're just talking about now. Being out there and doing this professionally for a number of years as someone who plays jazz music and writes original jazz music, but I also play classical music, and, sometimes I'm playing modern classical music. You see composers, who write in both genres kind of run into a lot of the same problems, and that is that people sometimes aren't willing to take a chance on new music, not because it isn't good, but just because maybe they don't know it or they're afraid that they don't know it. Clubs sometimes can be a little bit more hesitant to program groups that rely on a lot of original music, concert series, etc. So my organization, New Music Horizons, is kind of a grassroots effort to try to get more exposure for composers of jazz and classical music who are writing new music in those genres. And we put on a series of concerts here in New York to highlight composers. So not just a band, but there has to be a band that is writing original music, or a classical composer who's writing original music for ensembles. And so we highlight those composers in concert. We put them on here at a few venues in New York, Flushing Town Hall out in Queens, which is the big arts venue in the borough of Queens. And we have a new partnership now with the National Jazz Museum in Harlem for the jazz groups that we present. So that's really what it's about. And it's the same thing, whether it's exposing people at a young age to this music or at not so young of an age. Exposure for this music is key. It's not something that you can just keep in your bedroom and put it under your bed and hope people will discover it. Experiences show me that you really have to make an effort to get out there and share that stuff with people. And that's really the thrust of New Music Horizons, to try to give exposure and a voice to kind of these emerging and mid-career artists in that field.
Very nice. Let's talk about your album, Moving Day, in which you're also re-releasing in Europe on the 24th of this month. What is the meaning behind this title, Moving Day?
Moving Day, yes. So this album, the title and the title track to the album, is in reference to the fact that I've moved many, many times over the course of my life. Since I was a young kid, I think I've moved about 14 or 15 times over the course of my life around different parts of the country and, a number of places here once I moved to New York. So I was always in the process of living somewhere, unpacking, staying there for a little bit, and then putting everything back in your boxes and packing up and leaving. And certainly, a very personal thing to me. I think moving is a really interesting experience. Can be very traumatic for some. Something that kind of forces you to take stock of all of your stuff to see what you need, what you really need to bring with you and what you can leave behind. And I think that's both literally and metaphorically as well. And that's really the inspiration behind, the title and the title track from the record.
Okay. Being that you get to travel, because you mentioned traveling out of the country, being that you get to travel, did you see traveling in your future starting out?
Well, yes and no. Going into this business, watching your teachers and the people going before you, that if you're successful, at some point you're probably going to get out of your immediate geographical area. Now, professionally, I haven't traveled a ton. I can't say I've traveled all the time. Like some people are on the road quite a bit, which is okay to me because you do enough of that traveling, it has its pluses and minuses. That being said, I am certainly starting to get out of New York a little bit more often with my music. I'm going to be over in the UK in February for a week to teach a master class and do a number of nice concerts over there. So I'm really looking forward to that, and definitely been kind of expanding my music a little bit more and more into some of the European markets. And as you mentioned, the album is getting a re-release here in a couple days, January 24th, on a label that's out of Finland. And they're going to be giving extra exposure for the record kind of in Northern Europe, where it didn't really get as much coverage the first time around when I put it out a couple years ago. But I've been very, blessed to have the response from the record be as such that, there was a demand for a re-release and a label there that, can kind of help me reach the people some ears maybe that I didn't reach the first time around. So that's pretty exciting.
Very nice. What is your favorite song to perform?
Ooh, wow, that's a tough question. Geez, there's so much music out there.
No, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If I had to limit it maybe to the songs that are on my record, there's a song, the third track on the album is called The Bells, and it's a song that I'm particularly proud of. It's a lot of fun to play, but it's also one of my favorite efforts so far as a writer. It's kind of an interesting thing. In general, the music on this record, minus two of the standards that I've reworked, are all songs that are about a certain person, place, and thing. It's the first time as a writer, rather than just writing music in the abstract, I try to write music almost to a picture, if you will, to create a scene or about an idea. So if the first track was about my experiences moving all over the place, The Bells was a musical depiction of a sound that I heard. I was traveling. I was in the south of France, in the town of Nice on the Mediterranean coast in the summer. It's beautiful, hot, you're They're on the water. And in this old town, so in the distance, I could hear two church bells ringing, and they were ringing at this very odd interval with one another. They would get very close together, get farther apart, and sonically the pitch was very close, and it created a certain kind of ring. The sound struck me so much that I kind of remembered it. I went home and I wrote down like a little musical depiction of that, and I wrote the rest of the song kind of around that idea of these different sounds of the bells. So that's always been a favorite of mine to play because I always felt it was one of my more honest writing efforts, if I'm honest. So,
would you say that's the most requested out of all of your songs?
Well, maybe not. Requested. It's funny because I've gotten a pretty nice response across the board when I look at reviewers and radio play. There isn't really any one song that people tend to favor. There's always a few people who love this one and people who love that one and people who ask for this or that. So it's funny. It's really been pretty kind of even across the board. It's always interesting to see what people like and don't like. And a lot of times I usually almost hesitate to point out which ones are my favorites because you hate to influence people, as to what they like. Because sometimes songs that I'm like, yeah, this one's okay, they love it. And so you don't want to say anything to make them think that they shouldn't love it, So everybody's going to like what they're going to like, and that's cool because everybody's certainly entitled to their own musical opinion,
That's right. So what's next for Mark? Are there any upcoming projects that you've been working on besides the re-release in a couple of days?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, I'm working on the next record. I've got a date in the studio here in May. I'll be going back towards the end of May. The band will be going back in the studio for our third record. I've got all the music written for it. We've actually been performing the music quite a bit. We got a concert actually tomorrow here in town at the Catano. Jazz at the Catano, very nice venue. And the theme for this record, it's a tribute record of sorts. Usually when you think of like a tribute album, you're doing cover tunes, you're doing other people's music. But it's more that I wrote a bunch of music. I wrote 8 tunes kind of that were inspired by other music that I really like, or composers. Sometimes it's more of a direct reference, and sometimes it's a little bit more general. And I kind of picked an eclectic mix of music that kind of has helped inspire me to this point, things that have always just been sources of musical inspiration, such as like the music of Wayne Shorter or Miles Davis, but also the music of Igor Stravinsky, classical music. And even one of the tracks is inspired by the music of this band from Sweden that I split a very small tour of in Europe a couple years ago, a band called Corpo. They had a song that I really liked, and I took the opening phrase of it, and then I wrote a brand new song around it, kind of as a tribute to them and that time that I had with them over in Europe. So that's the next thing. We've been busy, playing the music and getting it together. It's starting to get in a good place. So I'm real excited to get in the studio and see what we can do.
Okay, nice. Mark, do you have any shout-outs that you'd like to give to your team, your drummer, your pianist, or anybody?
Yeah, definitely. The trio is a team project, and that team is Scott Newman on drums and Tim Harrison on piano. So definitely a big shout out to them for all of their dedication to this project and helping making this thing happen. So couldn't do it without them.
Nice. Could you please tell us, Hindsighters, how to stay connected with you?
Sure. I am very active on social media, and my website is always up to date. For the most part, my website, you can easily find me at markwademusicny.com. I'm also happy to say that if you just go on Google and Google my name, I'm the first thing that comes up in the Google search engine these days, so I'm very findable online. And you can find me on Twitter at MarkWadeBass and on Facebook as well. I'm always, posting about stuff that's going on, and I'm always happy to hear from folks. If you listen to the music, it's always good to get your feedback. So we'd be happy to meet you all online.
Very nice. Thank you. Well, thank you, Mark, for joining us today on the Indie Grind, and we will definitely be keeping in contact with you. And we appreciate you coming and letting us know your story.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on here. It was great talking to you.
No problem. Thank you. You have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Well, Hindsighters, that is all for this segment. I am Rhasheeda Davis, and thank you guys for tuning in to the Indie Grind. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Indie Grind and check out the latest and upcoming guests. And guys, be sure to connect with Mark Wade at markwademusicny.com. You can also follow him on Facebook and Twitter at MarkWadeBass. So be sure to check him out and check out all music from him. And also check out his new album titled Moving Day, which he's also re-releasing on the 24th of January. Guys, that's my time, and remember to keep on grinding.